I was never supposed to be there. That's something I keep telling myself even now. When you grow up in a system that's broken, and then you get swallowed by it, the lines between guilt and innocence start to blur. I didn't kill anyone. I didn't even hurt anyone. But the state said I was involved, that I enabled something terrible. I became a scapegoat in a trial that was more about headlines than justice. I was sentenced to 10 years. Not ideal, but survivable. I got used to the routines, the food, the sounds. In prison, routine is your oxygen. You live for small things. Lunch trays with an extra slice of bread. A phone call from someone who hasn't forgotten you. That's what I held on to, until they transferred me. No one told me why. One morning I was yanked from my bunk, handcuffed, and loaded into a van. No warning, no explanation. I asked where I was going. No one answered. They put a black bag over my head. Not a figure of speech, a real black cloth bag, tight at the neck. That alone told me this wasn't standard procedure. The trip felt endless. We drove for what I estimate was several hours. No bumps, no turns I could count. Just straight road and silence. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the faint beeping of something electronic behind me. Eventually, the van stopped. No commands, just silence, until the door slid open, and I was yanked out onto what felt like gravel. The air smelled wrong. Metallic, damp, almost underground. I couldn't hear traffic. No birds. Just the wind, and the occasional metal creak, like something heavy shifting far above or below. When they removed the bag, I was standing in front of a large iron door with no signs, no flags, no indication this was government property. Just gray concrete, rusted rails, and a keycard scanner with a red light. A guard or someone dressed like one scanned a card and opened the door. It didn't look like any prison I'd seen before, and I've seen a few. The walls were darker, the lights dimmer, the silence heavier. I didn't know it then, but this place was never listed anywhere. No public record, no facility ID, no legal jurisdiction, and I had just become one of the disappeared. The moment I stepped inside, I knew this wasn't like any facility run by the Department of Corrections. No intake process, no fingerprints, no strip search, just a silent escort. 2 guards, both with black gloves and visors that hid their eyes. They didn't speak, not even to each other. The hallway was narrow, metallic, and cold. No windows, no signs, just buzzing overhead lights and the sound of my own footsteps echoing too loudly. At some point we passed doors, steel doors without handles, just small slits at eye level. Some were closed. Others had a faint hum coming from behind them, or something worse. A clicking sound, like fingernails tapping on metal, slow and deliberate. Eventually, we stopped. One of the guards pressed a code into a panel. The door slid open without a sound. Inside was a room, bare. Concrete walls, a cot with a thin mattress, a metal toilet, and a camera in the corner. No bars. Just 4 walls and 1 flickering light overhead. They pushed me inside and closed the door behind me. There was no lock sound. Just silence again. No one said a word. Not even a number for the room. I didn't even know what day it was anymore. I sat down on the cot, and for the first time since my arrest, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel until now. Fear. Not the fear of prison. I'd already lived that. This was different. This was uncertainty. Total disconnection from everything human. Hours passed. No one came. No food. No water. No sound. I started to wonder if this was some kind of solitary confinement. But even that has protocol. This place didn't feel like punishment, it felt like abandonment. Sometime in the night, the light went out. Total darkness. But not silence. From somewhere behind the walls, I heard breathing. Not mine. Not the kind of loud snoring from inmates in nearby cells. Just soft, controlled, deliberate breathing. Continued for hours. I pressed my ear against the wall, and for a moment, I thought I could hear something else. A voice, whispering, too low to make out words, and then scratching. From the other side, slow, steady, like nails dragging across concrete. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, if you could even call it that, the light came back on. No knock, no announcement, just a metal tray sliding in through a thin slot in the wall. Cold oatmeal, a piece of bread, and a cup of water. That was the first sign that time even existed here. The walls were thick, but the longer I stayed, the more I noticed things. Muffled voices, doors opening and closing, someone crying, someone else laughing. Not a joyful laugh, but something unhinged. I learned to listen. That was the only way to understand anything in this place. At one point, I heard shouting in the hallway, heavy footsteps, a brief struggle, then silence. I pressed my ear against the door. 2 guards dragging someone. The sound of shoes scraping the floor. Then the click of a panel. A door opening, but not mine. And then nothing. Whoever that was never came back. Over the next few days, or what felt like days, I noticed the same thing happening again. Another inmate. Same pattern. Screams. Struggle. Silence. They were taking people. And no one ever returned. There was no schedule, no routine. Meals came at random. Lights turned on or off for no reason. And every few hours, that breathing sound behind my wall would return. It never reacted to me. Never answered when I whispered. Just existed. Constant and patient. One day, during the food delivery, I caught a glimpse of something. When the slot opened, the guard on the other side didn't move like a normal person. He stood too still, too straight, like he wasn't just a man, but something pretending to be one. I stared into the dark slit where the tray had come through, and I swear, just before it closed, I saw an eye, but it wasn't watching me. It was watching the wall behind me, and that's when it hit me. They weren't keeping us locked in here because we were dangerous. They were keeping us locked away from something worse, something already inside. I stopped eating for a while, not out of protest, but because I was afraid of what they were putting into the food. The guards never spoke. The lights flickered at random, and the breathing behind the wall became louder. It wasn't just breath anymore. Now it had rhythm, like it was mimicking mine. Every time I exhaled, it exhaled too. When I held my breath, it waited. I started scratching the wall with my fingernail. One long scratch for yes, too short for no. I didn't expect anything. But the next day, I saw faint scratches from the other side. Not random. They were copying mine. I kept doing it. Every time I sent a pattern, the next day it would be echoed back. Whoever or whatever was behind that wall was intelligent. It gave me something I hadn't felt in days. A reason to stay sane. Then came the message. One night, just before the lights went off, I heard a whisper through the air vent. It was weak, distorted, like it was coming through water. But I could make out the words. They took Marcus. That name hit me like a punch. Marcus was one of the guys I saw during intake. Tough, loud, angry at the system. He was also the first person I didn't hear again after being dragged away. The whisper came again. Room 12. He's gone. They're not human. I wanted to scream, but I knew that would get me noticed. So I sat, still and cold, heart racing. Who was this voice? And more importantly, how were they still alive? The next morning, my tray had something extra. A folded paper napkin with 5 words scrawled in pen. They're watching through your eyes. I dropped the tray, looked up at the camera in the corner. The red light was on. It was always on. But I'd never considered who might be watching. Or what. That night, I covered the camera with my blanket. Within 5 minutes, a high-pitched alarm rang out. Doors slammed in the hallway. I heard shouting, real shouting, and running. But they didn't come to me. They went somewhere else. And someone screamed. Not just any scream. A scream so full of panic and agony, it didn't sound human. After that, the breathing behind the wall stopped. Completely. The silence was worse than any sound. The silence was unbearable. Days passed. No food slot. No light changes. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. I was alone. Or so I thought. Desperation made me do something reckless. I tore at the corner of the wall opposite the camera. Fingernails bleeding, skin raw, but I kept pulling. Under the concrete, I found a metal grate, small, rusted, almost invisible. I pried it open, just enough to slip my hand through. Cold air rushed out. A faint smell, like wet earth and something metallic. I reached inside. My fingers brushed something soft. A hand? A claw? Couldn't tell. Suddenly, the wall vibrated. Behind it, a whisper. Leave. Now. The voice was the same as before. The one that sent me the message. I froze. Then the camera's red light flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the room. From the grate, a shape emerged. Tall. Thin. Not quite human. Eyes glowing faintly red in the darkness. I tried to pull back, but my arm was trapped. The thing whispered again. They never left. They never left. The door slammed open. Guards burst in, dragging me away. I didn't fight. I just stared at that wall. Because I knew. I was never meant to leave.